Welcome to Binder TV. We are here in Harrisonburg, Virginia with the owner of Scoutco Products, Mike Moore. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, John? Thanks.
Pretty good.
Thanks for coming.
So we're going to talk about the Great American Buildoff and Mike's participation in the said Buildoff. And a couple of awards that he's won with the Buildoff. I guess you had 4 vehicles?
4, yes.
Four entries, and you won it
Twice.
So
With these two.
okay, so this one here. Well, first let's talk about your business.
All right.
Tell us what Scoutco does, and
right.
just a little bit about yourself.
Scoutco started in. You asked me hard questions right off the bat. I don't even remember.
Not a problem.
I think it was in 2010 or 11 we started Scoutco. We had a trucking company actually in the same building that my family ran for about 20 years, and toward the end of that we started doing our own vinyl graphics on our trucks to save money from paying somebody else to do it. So we kind of got into doing it for ourselves, and then the salesmen started coming in and saying, hey, I didn't know you did that. Will you make them for us for here or for this company? And the next thing you know, we started getting phone calls. So somewhere along the line we spread out to where we were doing half the trucking companies in the area, and that was in the spare rooms and offices here in the building. So a couple years into that, we ended up shutting the trucking company down, and I got a job working for a wastewater pretreatment plant and doing the vinyl graphic stuff at home through the LLC that we called Scoutco. And as the years progressed through, it kind of became less of the sign and vinyl graphic stuff and more of the Scout stuff, and now we're busy doing both. So
you
that's the abridged version of it anyway.
Right, and then you do parts, restorations.
Right, yep. As far as what we do now, we do full restorations, stuff like what the Buildoff vehicles were, and then we do.
But you're known for graphics.
Right, to begin with, yes, sir.
Different striping and that.
And that started, I guess, that's where you and I really got to know one another. I don't know when
we
that
collaborated.
Was. That was probably
15 years ago.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah, we actually, I had put some stuff on eBay. It was a Scout decal, but I didn't have the name or anything on it. But you contacted me, and I knew who you were. I think you probably knew who I was. I've been to nationals for 20 some years. But you contacted me about wholesaling those to Scout Light Line, and that's kind of what started our business relationship.
Pretty good relationship with Scout Light Line and Super Scout.
Right.
And Scout
right. Yep.
For all these years.
Yep.
So you've been attending the nationals for about 20 years?
Started in either 98 or 99, I can't remember which. So last year was either right around 20 years, 2021, something like that.
The Nats is the Scout and Light Truck nationals. It's held in Springfield, Troy every year, and it's in its 30th year. And then, I don't know, 7 years we've been doing the Great American Buildoff, which is held there. And that is where at least 4 or 5 shops compete for their best restored vehicle, professional. And you've had 4
entries and 2 wins.
And this one was the first one.
That was the first year for the show and the first win for our company. Yep.
And then there were two others besides this one.
Right. This was 2014. We had the Scout, and then in 2015, I don't think anybody showed up in 2015, and in 2016 this one. So,
okay.
Yep.
And then you've had 2 others.
Correct.
Since.
Yep.
Gotcha. So we're going to dive into nuts and bolts on both of these vehicles, and I want you to tell us overall about this one.
That one started out as an idea, and that was about it. I guess first off, that was a full-on customer build. That was nothing to do with us at all, other than we were just contracted to build.
So it was his idea?
Correct. He gave us a pretty rough idea of what he wanted. What started that Scout was the previous year, actually 2 years previous to that, was in 2012. We had a maroon Scout that looked really similar to that. We put a 5.3 LS in and had it at the national show. And the owner of this Scout was there when we unloaded it off the trailer and immediately latched on to us.
That's Rob Young, or was that
right.
his dad?
Both. They were both there that year, yep. And
what was his dad's name? I know Rob.
Gene.
Gene, okay.
Yeah, Gene Young. But they they basically watched us unload it off the trailer and swarmed it and went all over it. And before we left that evening, we had already had a handshake deal on building this truck. And it evolved along the way, as they all do.
So what'd you start with?
We started with a frame that was completely stripped that came from the Atlanta area, a body tub that was completely stripped that came from Arizona, and
Parts. So it wasn't a unit.
no, it was not.
Well, that's kind of unique, because a lot of restorations start with at least one core unit. You're starting with components.
We started with nothing.
That's interesting.
Like I say, this frame, that body, those seats, and I mean everything, it just kind of compiled stuff that we had here, in our shop, and stuff that we bought from everybody everywhere, and put it all together and built the truck.
So starting with the frame, what did you do to the frame?
Frame on that truck, you're going back to 2014, so I've got to think a little bit, but the frame on that it started out as a stock Scout 2 frame and really ended up as a stock Scout 2 frame. We didn't do any shackle reverse or any suspension work or anything like that on it at all. We gusseted a few things where they break the spring hangers off and stuff like that.
Was it sandblasted?
It was blasted and powder coated, but after we blasted it, like I say, we braced a few things up, key areas, and welded a few things up. Of course, put LS motor mounts in it. That truck's got an LS3 in it. But really, the frame's basically untouched on it. Really, but like I say, blasted, powder coated, gloss black, and started from there.
How about axles?
Axles are stock Dana 44 housings. We did a cut and turn up front.
When you say cut and turn, is that for correcting the camber?
Right, it is. The stock Scouts, except for 1980, had 0 degrees, and we put about 6 degrees in this truck.
So this is to improve handling?
Right.
That's what you recommend?
It basically, if you're looking at the vehicle from the top, we leaned the top of the front wheels as far as the angle that they turn, we leaned that backward, which anything new, anything other than a Scout really has basically got some in it, and these have 0. So we just are basically trying to make it drive like International probably should have.
Right. So how about springs and chassis?
Springs are stock Scout 2 springs. We found a decent pack. Actually, when we first built the truck, it sat a little bit crooked, so we ended up changing the springs out. Right after the show, we brought it back here and changed the springs out and leveled it back up. But stock springs, of course, new bushings and everything, what you would expect for a full frame up build. But springs were stock, shackles are stock, no added sway bars or anything like that. It's got Bilstein shocks. Yeah, I mean,
brakes, what we do there?
The front brakes were left alone. We put a rear disc brake kit from TSM on the back. Of course, the brakes with the changing that, we changed the prop valve and the master cylinder and the booster and all that stuff.
Hoses,
everything under the
lines.
hood on it was chromed up, so the stock stuff didn't look cool enough for it anyway. So we put a different master cylinder and booster and stuff on it. But mechanically, I guess by and large, it's.
How about steering gear? The
Steering's stock stuff.
Rebuilt?
Stock stuff, prettied up. Yep. But yeah, it's definitely rebuilt.
Nothing torqued or tweaked?
Nope.
Okay. Exhaust?
Exhaust is a long story, but it was built here. It is stainless front to back. We built the headers in-house. I had a friend of mine that does TIG welding on the side, and he's really, really good at it. He came in and welded up the headers for us. We built jigs and made headers on back to the tailpipe. Everything's mandrel bent. Everything is stainless steel. The mufflers are stainless, and every clamp and every bolt and every hanger on it's stainless.
Does it sound good?
It sounds good, but it's quieter than what most people think it should be.
Is that the way the customer wanted it?
We first put a set of boreless on it, which was ridiculously loud. He first saw the truck. First time he saw it completed was at the show.
Okay.
And when we started it to back it out of the trailer, he was with us to help her watch back it out of the trailer, and that was his first comment. Man, that thing is loud. It ended up being too loud, so we ended up swapping mufflers out for some other ones.
Well, it's nice that you were able to tweak to the customer's want.
Right.
What about electrical? What do we do? Harnesses and...
Completely rewired front to back with an Easy brand wiring harness. It's got, I think we put a bunch of LED bulbs in the stock reproduction housings and the taillights and parking lights and all that. I know it's got H4 headlights in it. But as far as electrical, there's probably 10 miles of wire in that. I remember watching the show that you guys did with Jeff, and he was talking about all the wiring in the Travelall, and I'll bet this one rivals that. It's got power windows, power locks, keyless entry, remote start, extra dome lights all over the place.
That's quite a list.
Stereo with 5-channel amp with a subwoofer in the back, and I took the kick panel vents and closed those off and made enclosures up there for I think they were 5 1/4 inch speakers, 2-way speakers in the front, and I think there's a set of 6.5s in the back. But the stereo sounds really good.
Is it a thumper?
It's not crazy. What he has when we built this truck, Mr. Young had a Yukon Denali and with a Bose system in it. He said, I want it to sound similar to that. So that's kind of what we were shooting for. It's not ridiculous. It's not anything overdone. You're not going to rattle anybody's feelings out, but it sounds good. It's clean.
It's crisp and clear.
It is, yeah. I was into car audio for forever when I was younger, and I take put a little too much attention into the stereo system sometime, and it's not overdone, but it sounds good. But we put back to the stereo. It's got a double DIN, which is a bigger screen, about twice the size of a standard radio is the way they work it, but it's a double DIN touchscreen, backup camera, navigation, and
is that
all that stuff.
One of those that goes in and comes out?
This one didn't. What
look.
we did with this one, and you can see it in the pictures, but what we did with this one was actually custom build a center console in-house that comes up under the dash, and we moved the radio down into that console beneath the dash.
Gotcha.
And then used the radio. The stock radio location is where we ran the AC through it, but it's got a vintage air AC in it with everything being electronic. There's no vacuum. Everything's under the dash. Nothing's under the hood. So we needed the room, so we just moved the radio down lower right in front of the shifter.
Anything special about the speedometer? Rebuild?
All of the gauges were from Speed Hut. We've been using Speed Hut for a number of years. We send them files that we generate with our vinyl software to do Scout 2 logos or IH logos or whatever logos the customer wants. So we did, they're round gauges, but we did a six gauge cluster in it, and it's all GPS speedometer. There's no cables. It's all GPS. And
is this an automatic or?
It's an automatic.
Okay.
Like I say, it's about 450 horsepower LS3 with a 4-speed overdrive automatic behind a GM transmission.
What about fuel tank?
Fuel tank stock. When we do our LS swaps, we use an external fuel pump, so it's outside of the tank, so you don't even have to drop the tank. You can just attach and mount the pump on the frame rail and boogie up to the engine with it.
Is it? Did you do anything special like coat the tank or?
It's a new poly tank.
Oh, it's a poly.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So won't rust.
No rust there.
So that's an MTS product.
Right.
See, new sending units, fuel lines, anything special
new.
there?
We make those in-house too. It's just it's like a newer vehicle would have. It's a poly plastic.
Pardon my ignorance on the LS, but are the fuel lines, because my nephew ran into fuel injecting a 392, the lines needed to be larger.
Right.
Or it was not getting enough fuel, so this had to have special.
It's a 3/8 supply line with
Okay.
5/16 return, but they're both plastic poly lines. They're almost like the factory ones.
But you couldn't use stock with that motor.
Well, they're higher pressure with the
Right.
LS pump is
Okay.
a higher pressure, and it's got GM style quick disconnects that just snap to plug on and unplug. And we make those up in house. We've got the tooling and stuff here to make those. So everything on that is, the fuel filter just goes click, click. You plug the line on to the inlet, onto the outlet, and then up to the pump, and everything's just plug and play with it. The way we make our lines.
So tell us about the engine.
The engine was sourced by the customer. That's the first time he ever saw our shop. He brought the engine and transmission and dropped it here. It came from a company in Arkansas that's no longer in business now. They did hot rod engines and stuff for forever. But it's a Chevy LS3, basically what they put in the Corvettes, somewhere around like 2012, 14, something like that. I don't know for sure. But
What was the horsepower you said?
they stock were 420 or 430. So we figured with the freer flowing intake, because through the Corvette's more restrictive intake, and then the exhaust, we figure with headers and true dual exhaust on this truck, we're probably figured 450 horsepower. So we did not dyno it or run it on anything to tell us that, but that's what we're assuming.
And what's behind that engine?
As far as transmission,
Yeah.
a 4L70E. 4-speed automatic.
So one of your specialties at Scoutco is LS conversions. Can you tell us how difficult that is?
You had to hold your nose when you said
No,
that, didn't you?
I'm beginning to appreciate. Not beginning. I do appreciate it. I appreciate all.
I do too.
You know, the 4BTs, the Cummins. I do appreciate it all. It's just fun to pick on guys with Chevys.
Everybody, I pick on the guys with the Internationals,
Right.
but you know, I see there's a place for all of them. We've
It
got
is.
one right on the other side of the camera, behind the camera, that's the Jeep 6, and I love it. I think it's neat. You know, my son's building one with a 152 in it. I was an SD33T guy for years, so I can't really
Right.
fault anybody
No,
for wanting a
no.
V8, you know. But anyway, I'm sorry. Your question was
The question is that your specialty is
Right.
LS with probably different transmissions. Tell us how difficult that is, and can a guy bring you a Scout to have that done?
We do them all the time. There's probably 5 in the shop right now that are either LS swapped or undergoing an LS swap, and that's pretty common. We've always got a couple here for that. We've got a Travelall here now it's a nice truck. I mean, looks great, and he took a 392 out, and we're putting a 5.3 LS truck engine in. So we get everything from just to swap the engine to a full frame up build like this one was with an LS in it. So we do everything in between for LS.
But you pretty
trucks.
much got all the
But-
ins, outs, the problems, everything's wored out. Have you run into anything
there's
new?
no problems with them, John. Come on. That's why you switch the engines.
There's got to be some engineering.
There is. It's always the first time you do something is difficult. And again, the first one we did was actually the first frame-up build that Scoutco did, period, in 2012. And it had a 5.3 in it. And we learned a lot, we measured a lot, and we wrote a lot of stuff down because we thought, I bet we end up doing this again. Then this comes along, and we ended up doing it again, and we haven't stopped since. So we're really glad we wrote down all these measurements. But the first one that we did, we built the engine mounts from scratch and did everything and figured it all out, and that was a stock suspension truck. And with a 5.3 or 6.0 or 4.8, whatever engine you want, the LS engine straight out of a truck, straight into a Scout, is tighter than people think it is. You know, they think all these international
Small block.
engines are huge, and this little 4.8 liter, you know,
Right.
they're really, it's tighter than you think it is. And a stock suspension truck, stock height truck, I think we had figured if you moved it up an inch, it would hit the hood. If you moved it down an inch, when the suspension's at full stuff, it would hit the oil pan to the axle. If you moved it back an inch, it would hit the firewall. If you moved it forward an inch, the fan would be in the radiator, and then left and right is centered, so you don't want to mess with that. So basically, it has to be where it is. You know, you can move it a little bit, but not much.
Did you run into cooling problems?
No, we never have, not at all.
Okay.
Nope. We've got radiators. We used to use a company called TAP from Sophia, North Carolina for our radiators, but they've since gone out of business. So now we're using another company called Wizard Cooling to do our radiators, just because they've got basically what we use. We changed the inlet and outlet a little bit over what stock Scouts did on our radiators, and they'll custom build them. And I just have our customers call them directly when they're going to do a swap, and they ask me about it. And they'll build those radiators and ship them out to people.
So somebody could contact you if they wanted that done. Why don't we give the website? What's your website?
At least weekly. I get probably several times a week people call and ask about how to
What's
do
your
it.
website?
Scoutcoproducts.com, and our email is sales@scoutcoproducts.com. And
Don't you
emails
have a
and stuff
Facebook
like
page,
that.
though?
I do have a Facebook page.
Give them that.
Yeah, it's LS Scout.
Look at that on
Yeah.
Facebook, and you can ask questions and see what other people are talking
The best
about.
way to do it is probably to email us. I usually check emails a time or two a week, something like that. So it might not be the same day or even the same, you know, you might email me on Wednesday and I may not get back with you till the following week sometime, but I usually try to answer them.
Well, back to the truck.
Sure.
So, what do we do body-wise and finish? What kind of paint is this?
Honestly,
How
I
deep
don't
did we go?
remember. That body was the best Scout body that I've ever seen. It had one spot of rust the size of a dime on the inside of the passenger floorboard where the AC drain line got clogged and it leaked and ran down. Otherwise, I almost have to laugh when I say this, but otherwise it was a rust-free truck. There's no rust on the outside of it. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, we washed it out in our wash bay out here. We scrubbed the floors and like under the carpet, which wasn't there when we got it, but under where the carpet would be on the interior, it looked like you just waxed it.
So what color is that?
It was best, I don't even know what year it was, but best I can tell it was cyan yellow. It was a real pale, washed out looking yellow originally. And again, that's just the tub. The top came from a different truck. The
I'm
fenders and
asking you what
everything else.
this-
Oh, that color.
the
That
finish.
color now is.
Tell us about the finish and what that took.
That was the customer's choice. That was cayenne red metallic. It was a GM color. It's a really cool color out in the sun. Pictures of it and even looking at it in a shop don't really do it justice. The out in the sun, it's got a lot of pearl in it, a lot of metallic in it. And it's got, when the sun hits it, it's got orange highlights here and gold and different shades of red. It's really cool looking out in the sun. It really is a neat looking truck.
Yeah, I do recall that at the show where it won, it was stiff competition because you were up against an SS2 that was pretty much a Ted Ornis winner.
It was not pretty much. It was a Ted Ornis winner.
Jeff Ismails. His brothers, what do they call? What's it called? The Queen, the four-door, three-door,
Three-door, I think it was.
Travelette, which was blue one, and it was very well done. We had Mark Drake, or a Terra, I think.
I think it was a Terra or Travel. I don't remember if it had a top.
It was a short wheelbase, I believe, with a half top.
I think it was a.
Was it?
I think it was a long wheelbase, but I don't remember. He wasn't there that long that day. He just showed up for like a day and was gone.
Right. So you had that one, and then one of the Ismail brothers brought up a mock Shawnee Scout. It was an unfinished piece, and was that it? I mean, that was the
I
most.
think that's it. Us, IH Parts America, ISA, IH only, and Scout Madness. That's right. It was
tough. It was a tough year, so it was hard to choose. Anyway, we'll see. So we've done paint. In pretty much all the components were all stripped and redone. As far as
definitely. We
top,
do that.
doors,
We do that
fenders.
on. I shudder every time I see people on Facebook or on social media or whatever where they paint one and it's not disassembled, because there's no way you can get it painted right without. So we completely disassemble it.
Of course, this one started in pieces.
Right.
Which is very unique.
Yeah, you didn't
very,
have to take
very
this one
unique.
apart, but yeah.
No. So you assembled all the pieces.
We
and-
put it together to make sure everything fit like it was supposed to, then took it back apart, and everything was stripped down and painted. We have a Scout 2 frame that we cut at the firewall, so we've got the back part of it, and we put 4 casters under it that you can wheel it around. So that's how we take our tubs to the body shop. And then the doors, the fenders, the windshield frame, everything's completely stripped where there's nothing else that can come apart. And that's how we take them to paint and get it painted, and then we bring them back here in pieces and reassemble it here. And that one, we actually got the top back from paint at about 4:30 in the afternoon. We picked it up about 40 minutes away at 4:30 in the afternoon, put the top on, buttoned everything up about 3 a.m. and at 8 a.m. we were going to the show.
Holy cow. I didn't know you were cutting it that close.
We were pretty snug on that one.
Yeah, that was.
As far as the body work on it, where we started talking about being rust free, I can't remember if we put quarter panels on this one or not. I'm almost positive we did, because
You want to treat
I
behind.
usually tell people I won't build one without putting quarters on it.
Yeah, it's
And
always
I
best.
remember drilling the holes for the emblems, and so I'm almost, I think almost positive.
Put
If we
quarters
didn't,
on it.
that's the last one that we didn't put quarters on before we did, and I'm almost certain we put quarters on it.
That's the
But
only way to
otherwise,
do it right. You gotta get behind here and get all this cleaned up.
You got to get the inside of the quarter panel and the outside of the inner quarter panel treated, because there's a void in there, and if you don't
Right.
treat it, you know what's
It's
going to
gonna
happen.
get you someday.
It's going to look like every other Scout on the road and
Right.
have holes rotted in the side.
Absolutely.
But-
So how about glass?
Glass is all new. The windshield is just a production windshield. Everything else on it, except the windshield, is actually cut at a local glass shop. All of the rest of the glass in that truck is tinted, and he didn't want to put tint on the glass because as it goes down, if there's something in the door or whatever,
Right,
it's going to scratch it. So we bought glass that was actually laminated with the tint in between the layers. So everything else on that truck, front to back, is tinted glass, except the windshield, and that's just a straight up.
Is this a custom burl bar?
It is GRC Randy down in Cleveland, Georgia.
Good people.
He does all of our roll bars and bumpers, unless the customer specifically tells us to go someplace else. That's where we push everybody to, because I like his bumpers and I like his roll bars. They've got just enough difference in the roll bar that it looks, I guess, beefier, and it looks different, I guess is my biggest thing with it. I like to have that truck sit at a show and you see the angle of the roll bar through the window on it is a little bit different,
Right.
and I just like the looks of it.
So what we do in the interior? Seats,
The interior,
upholstery, headliner.
When he first talked to us about building this truck, he said, I want it to look stock until you open the door or open the hood. So the hood's easy. You put an LS3 in it. It looks different. The interior of that truck was
Was it a challenge?
a huge challenge. It was a lot of fun, but there were days I went home and didn't want to come back the next day. The seats are out of a 2014, which again, it was brand new at the time, Grand Cherokee. They're tan, like a real light tan leather. And the seats themselves are cool because he sourced those as well. He actually found a scrap yard in Michigan outside of Detroit, and those seats came from that scrap yard. And when we flipped them over, on the bottom of the seat was a little decal wrapped around the spring, and it said, these aren't for resale, they're for crash testing use only.
Oh, great.
So come to find out, he called the place and asked me, he's like, what's going on with this? And, just curious.
Yeah.
He called and asked, and when they crash tested the vehicles for Daimler Chrysler,
That's where they
they ended up there, and he bought the seats. So it was pretty cool. We actually had the seats before they had those vehicles on the showroom floor. So it was pretty cool.
interesting.
But they were a pain to get in there. A Scout 2, the sidewalls, if you don't know, the sides come up and they get narrower at the shoulder. So if you and I were sitting in the vehicle, the floor is wider than what it would be at our shoulders. So because of that, you have to get a seat that's narrower than you think you do, because down here you got all the room in the world, but up here you can't get there because it comes in and hits. So we ended up having to cut a little more than what we really wanted to out of the tunnel and squeeze it in order to move the seats inboard so that we had shoulder room. So it was a lot of work to modify, and it was like, man, you start crying when you start cutting that metal that doesn't have any rust at all in it on a tub, because it's like you'll never find this again, and then you start cutting it up. But we put the front seats out of the Cherokee in it. The center console, the armrest part, and the part right beneath it was out of the same vehicle. From there forward up to under the dash that we talked about before, I built here. Part of that's MDF wood. Part of it is ABS plastic that I heated and bent and shaped and made wood bucks and pushed it down into. I learned a ton building this truck, and there's a lot of it that I would do differently next time, but there's a lot I would do the exact same way.
You always learn on each unit.
Oh yeah,
something.
If you stop learning, you stop.
You're not progressing.
You're not doing it right, So, but the back seat was a stock Scout 2 seat. Backstreet Customs is a local upholstery shop we use a lot. They made the back seat look like it belonged with the front seats, and he did an awesome job on it. It changed the shape of it to where most people look in it and go, what's that seat out of? Because it's just different enough it doesn't look stock. I think he added some, like if you look across the top of a Scout 2 back seat, it's flat. This one is shaped with some contour to it. He replaced all the foams and everything. He really did a good job. Door panels were done there as well.
All color keyed to match.
Oh yeah, yep.
And then headliner?
The headliner we did here, we just take a piece of 1/8" Luan, go to Lowe's and buy a piece of 1/8" Luan, cut one end of it off and it fits, and we just cover it with more modern,
The upholstery
headliner
to match.
material. Yeah.
Or something that color,
It's cloth, but it's actually
Complemented
got like a 1/8 or 3/16 inch thick foam on the back of it, so that it's actually made for headliners, but it's tan to match the rest of it.
So didn't you say there was map lights and stuff that's not factory?
We just bought some, I don't even remember what they were, probably Universal billet aluminum. We've got a 12-volt outlet in the back and a little light in the back of it, like in the cargo area, and then there's a couple other dome lights here and there.
Factory bumpers?
They are factory bumpers that were re-chromed. For me, that's what makes that truck look good. It's almost too plain with no stripe or anything on it. Of course, I make stripes, so it's easy for me to say that, but it's almost a plain looking truck.
Doesn't have your trademarks
I
on
know,
it.
right?
But it's a beautiful truck, and
But
it sure was a crowd pleaser at the Nationals.
It was. But the bumpers are re-chromed. The taillight buckets, it has the early style with the chrome around it because he liked the chrome, so we put the early style marker lights on it. It's a 77, so it could go either way.
Yeah.
So we put the early ones in it. And the taillight buckets are NOS. I found those at a dealership in West Virginia. The front parking light buckets were re-chromed. The side markers are the reproductions from Lightline. Door handles were NOS. Door weather stripping was NOS. The grill 77 to 79 grill that nobody can find a good one. That one I pulled out of the box and bolted on that truck. Same with the headlight trim rings.
Wow, lucky.
He paid for them.
Yeah,
But
well,
they look really, really good. And it's like, that's still to me,
Right.
I mean, it's like just to drive that truck scares me because of like everybody worries about their paint. I worry about the grill more than I do the
well,
paint.
yeah.
When I was test driving this
kinds
truck,
of things you can't replace easily.
the wheels were sent off to Stockton Wheel, where they actually, I didn't know this until I went to get those re-chromed, but they can't, or they won't, I guess, re-chrome them in one piece. It's actually a two-piece wheel. You've got the center and then you've got the rim.
They take them apart.
So they put them on a lathe, cut them apart,
Interesting.
refinish the two pieces separately, and then supposedly they say it's Stockton Wheel in Stockton, California. They say they have a proprietary process to cold weld these two pieces back together. It looks to me like they weld it and then they paint it with silver. It's in the backside. It looks like they just put some, West Virginia chrome, we always call it, just chrome spray paint back on there. But, on the face of them, they look fantastic. Those wheels are awesome.
Looks like nice center caps.
The center caps were
Factory.
re-chromed, actually polished stainless lug nuts we put on it. So that's the little stuff that I was saying. To me, that's what makes that Scout pop, I guess, because the paint is awesome looking, but especially inside, it's almost plain. But then the fact that you've got the tinted windows help a little bit, and then all of the chrome being either new old stock stuff or re-chrome stuff, it just makes that truck look awesome. And
It's a nice unit.
we line X the bottom side of the tub on almost all of them that we do when we have the frame off. So we flip the body upside down and take it, our line X dealers next door, and we sandblast and line the bottom of it. So this one had that done to it. So to look underneath of that truck, you've got a gloss black frame, then you've got line X, and then you've got the stainless exhaust front to back, and everything under there is new. The axles we paint with Emron, gloss Emron, DuPont Emron paint. So it just underneath looks just as clean as the top of it does. So that's what I like about it, is the little details. You can look as hard as you want, and you won't find anything that's dirty or funky or not refinished.
All the weather stripping, everything.
Everything's
All replaced.
new. Yep. And NOS where we could find it, and reproduction where we couldn't.
Is there any suppliers or vendors you want to credit on that one?
Well, your favorite light line dealer,
Heck
Scoutco.
Yeah, Scoutco.
Not who you thought. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Of course, obviously light line stuff we would source through our sales because it makes more sense. But like I said, Stockton Wheel, and I mean we bought a lot of stuff a lot of places. We bought our TSM brake kit through IH Parts America. Really everything else we had most of it here.
In
really.
stock.
Yeah. So that was when it's funny, when we started, this was like the third truck we built from the ground up. So when we started with it, I've been in the hobby since '98. Didn't start the business until I think it was 2010.
Right in there.
Somewhere right around there. So I had 12 years worth of stuff stored here and there and everywhere. So we needed a fender. I just went and pulled a fender and looked to see what the going rate is and sell it. Well, now I'm looking back and going, man, I had all kinds of stuff and I don't have any anymore.
Yeah.
We used it all in the first 3 or 4 trucks, so now I'm scrounging just like everyone else is.
Right.
But most of that stuff we did have in stock. So, inner fenders and stuff like that, we just went and pulled off the shelf. So,
What kind of fuel does he have to run? Just regular?
whatever, yeah.
Not anything special?
Nope.
What kind of oil do you recommend in these LSs?
I put Mobil 1 synthetic in all of them.
Okay.
That's what
And
we run in
then
them.
fluids and the tranny and anything special, rear ends and
Everything in this truck's synthetic, down to
Okay,
brake fluid.
okay.
The brake fluid, you don't have to worry about it eating paint. Where conventional brake fluid, DOT3 brake fluid's going to eat paint.
That's a good point.
This has got the purple stuff in it. So if
Right.
it leaks, it's not going to eat anything off. The reason we did that is because everything on it was new, so you may as well start with the good stuff to begin with. But also the underhood of that, we had Scout Lightline provide us with a panel. What we did, this is a secret I've yet to reveal until now, John. We had them make us a panel for under the hood on the inner fender. You guys make a quarter panel extension for the Terra and Traveler, so we used that profile and had it made, I think it was 40 inches, however long the inner fender is, and brought that top profile where it's got the convex and then contour curve at the top of the fenders and quarters, and then just went straight down from there. and we smoothed the inner fenders out in this truck. So all the wiring and hose routing and all that stuff is outside in between the original inner fender and that new panel. But if you open the hood and look at it, you've got the outer fender's got that curve, and then the inner fender has the exact same curve on the inside, and it's painted body color. So your brake fluid, if it leaks, is going to go right down over top of that paint. So we didn't want that to happen, so we put synthetic fluid in it.
Antifreeze? Regular, just nothing special there?
Nope.
Okay. Anything else on this truck that you want to talk about?
It's fast.
I'll bet it is.
It does things.
What gear ratio?
It does things Scout shouldn't do. It's got 354s in it. We
354s?
put an Auburn limited slip in the back.
Okay.
That way you can spin both tires at once.
We'll just open in the front.
It is, yeah. We figured it probably never have the hubs locked, to be honest. Drive shafts come from Tom Woods. We always use them for our drive shafts.
Looks like manual hubs.
Yeah, we put a set of Warren premium hubs on it. But no, that Scout, with the GPS speedometer that's in it, from Speed Hut, like we talked about before, it's got a 0 to 60 and a quarter mile calculator, and 0 to 60 was somewhere in the 4.5 to 5 second range, and quarter mile was 13.6.
Is he still driving it?
As far as I'm aware, he drives it some. He doesn't drive it a whole lot, but he drove it to, he lives around Auburn, Alabama, and he drove it to Birmingham to the Red Power Show a couple years back. He and his daughter took it down there, so it gets around a little bit, but he doesn't drive it a whole lot.
He's got a few to choose from, I believe.
He's got a collection of stuff, yeah. That's not his only one.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else on that one?
I don't suppose.
It's a beautiful truck, and
Thank you.
I think we're proud to have had it at the Nationals, and hopefully one of these days it'll come back so that other people can see it again.
We were hoping he would take it. He took it to Charlotte last year in 2019 and got best of show there at the Dixie Regionals, which got him an invitation to the Nationals for a Grand National Champion, but he wasn't able to make it. So we were kind of hoping he'd get it out there for that, because he didn't. That Scout hadn't won Grand National Champion. I think we've got
You got a few under your belt.
3 or 4 of them that have won it. So he was wanting it with that, and so were we, but he didn't get a chance to get it out there. So maybe we'll get him to drag it to Greenville or to Carlisle or someplace like that for another one. If it wins best of show, we can go then. So we'll
Thinking, going back in retrospect, the year that Joe Torres won, Carl and Mary Kindbergs should have been in the Buildoff. I don't know why we didn't do it. They won Grand National, and I think best of show that year. And they might have had a chance against Joe. The Joe's is a tough truck.
Joe's is a nice Scout. Yeah,
Very tough. But
it's a very nice Scout.
I don't know why we just didn't put that in there. It just didn't occur to anybody.
I don't remember the details of how or why or when.
They have a nice diesel Traveler.
1980.
Some good folks. So I think we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the dad's truck. So back in a few.